So, but we can probably go ahead and get started. Things were scheduled for 1. So, hi everyone. My name's Adam. I'm one of the people over here at Simplex IT handling security, risk, compliance, and all that. And we also have Kevin, but I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, for those that don't know me, name's Kevin Dukevich. Tech director here, I think, is my title of the month. I wear a lot of hats around here, but yeah, there are some comments on here when, actually, Adam will probably correct everything I say, so that's okay.
So today we'll be going over Secure Score within Microsoft 365, kind of what it is, what it does, and whatnot, and how you guys can make the most of it. So, yay, I've already gone over this slide with Kevin, so that makes it easier. But if you guys do want to reach out and contact us, we've got options there. Like I said, we handle a lot of the technical stuff, especially with me in security, risk, compliance, all that fun stuff, and Kevin just overseeing our tech department. We do, of course, have the Nascar Slide, as Bob likes to call it. Some of the tools and technologies that we work with here, Barracuda, Datto, Bigger Brains, and a whole lot of other ones here that would probably fill out have its own slide deck. And what we do, so we offer pure MSP services. So if you've got a business and everything, and you need some IT help, you can call us in. But we also do co-managed IT services. So this is great for companies out there that may already have an internal IT staff that want a little bit of extra help. And we love partnering with companies like this too. It's a real great relationship, and certainly helps to improve organizational security and technology postures and whatnot, as well as a good opportunity for that collaboration. So good relationship building. Bob also has books, and this is one of his other plug slides here, but feel free to check those out on Amazon and Audible. Some real good stuff in there. You got the CEO's Guide to Information Technology, the Co-Managed IT Services book, and the I Don't Want Your Job, which is kind of his way of reaching out and saying as an MSP that we're not necessarily here to go after everyone's jobs, and lay the groundwork for that co-managed IT relationship. Kevin, is there anything you would like to add to that quick overview?
No, this is one we will send these books out to lots of people. Pretty much most of our marketing campaigns and stuff like that. If you're going to talk with us, you're going to get one of these. Yeah, I do want to kind of reiterate what Adam said about Bob's I Don't Want Your Job book. Historically, it's always been one of those where the second a company starts talking about, a company that has an internal IT department starts talking about outsourcing stuff, the internal IT usually starts freaking out, well, what about my job? Literally, the title of the book is I Don't Want It. We want to create that partnership with you. We understand that you know your business, but you might be needing help, assistance, experience, time, whatever, with certain technologies, or you need an extra hand for a particular project because you don't have the skill in it. Or I've heard of this weird concept that some people do. You might want to take a vacation, usually shunned upon in corporate America, but there are some people who do like to take those, and that offers a great possibility for those smaller IT departments where you can actually go on a break, because we are there to help and offset and augment your internal capacities. So that's it. For the clients that we do have with Comit's relationship, I think they really do work out really good. You create a pretty good bond between them, and we can get a lot more done together than we can apart.
Yep, and yeah, and even from the security side, it's really great because, again, the internal people know the business a lot better than I will. So it's a really great opportunity to sit down with those individuals there and say, okay, here's the technology standards and security rules behind it. How do we implement this in the organization without creating a nightmare scenario for the average staff there? So it's a lot of fun, definitely poses some unique challenges, but so far we've been able to rise to the occasion and work through those. So, yeah. So Now we can start getting into the meat and potatoes of Microsoft Secure Score and kind of what that means and everything. There are some caveats to that. Most notably, Microsoft can and probably will update and change things as time goes on, as their technology platforms evolve and they continue to mature, as well as the changing landscape of cybersecurity. Because as we know, what was secure 5 years ago may not be secure anymore today. So it's being able to, for Microsoft on their end, to update those standards, those policies, and as they evolve their tech suite, cascade those down. There can be some licensing purchases depending on the item. Most notably, you get into Azure Active Directory, especially your P1, P2 plans. And this, when we get into some of the items later, we'll kind of demonstrate why that's the case. But depending on the organization, you might need to upgrade licensing in places. This also is not a replacement for a full holistic security posture. This focuses just on a few items in the Microsoft Cloud. So while it works to keep the Microsoft Cloud a little bit more secure, the problem is it's only in that area. So if you've got a on-premise server that's wide open to the internet, Secure Score is not going to save you there. Because as we know, there's the concept of defense in depth, and that's that multi-layered approach to security, starting up at the cloud level, working its way through. And this is a great facet for being able to secure the Microsoft Cloud. And the other interesting thing is that it may not completely align to certain compliance mandates, and we'll get into a little bit more of that later. But there are a few items out there that can conflict with some other agreements, such as the HIPAA high-tech framework, or even some aspects of NIST 800-171. And that's because Microsoft is looking at the environment and saying, we think we know a little bit better than some of these compliance mandates. And that's based on their data that they see. And unfortunately, as we know, updating compliance frameworks takes a lot of time. Especially looking at like your NIST 800-171 or HIPAA/high-tech. Getting those frameworks updated to keep pace with technology, they're usually a little lagging back. The updates do happen, but it, of course, takes time. So some of our talking points that we're going to get into, how to view Secure Score, how it impacts the organization, how to navigate action items, and we're going to review some example actions. So, and once we get through with this, we'll have some time for kind of some open discussion, Q&A, stuff like that. So if y'all have had some time to actually go through this on your own, or if you're just wondering about what we're going over here and want to dig a little bit deeper, we'll have opportunities to do that. So should be a good time. So what is the Secure Score? The Secure Score is kind of a good little tool that Microsoft has built into their ecosystem to kind of measure the state of an organization's security posture, reports those top improvement actions. You can compare benchmarks, establish some KPIs, and it does reach across that Microsoft Cloud. You can access that from the Microsoft Defender Admin Center, or you can simply go to security.microsoft.com/securescore and then log in with your administrator account. And over here on the right, I do have that little bit of a screenshot there, and that's kind of just your overall splash page that you get. You get that percentage of space, and this is just straight from the Microsoft documentation, but it does give you that percentage of where you're at. And it even shows a baseline of other businesses similar to yours. So that kind of lets you compare with what the rest of the industry is doing, and the objective is have that number a bit higher than everyone else. And then it'll also break down across the discipline areas between like Azure Active Directory, Teams, Exchange Online, and say where things are looking. You'll have those action items that you can get into, the status of them, the impact it'll have on Secure Score. And then you can even build out those custom KPIs and benchmarks as well. So if there's stuff that you look at and you go, yes, I really care about this facet here and Secure Score doesn't, you can kind of tailor that to your own organizational needs. So there are 19 action items to get into. And they're a pretty good approach to the cloud security side. You've got things such as turning on your user risk policy, turn on sign-in risk policies, ensure users can enroll in multi-factor authentication, configure which users can be allowed to present in Teams meetings, making things so that only invited users are allowed to share automatically within Teams meetings. Turn on the customer lockbox feature to keep your data safe within the Microsoft ecosystem from Microsoft's own people. That kind of helps out in mitigating some of those supply chain risks and whatnot on that front. Requiring multi-factor authentication for admin roles. Not expiring passwords. That's actually one of the ones that I mentioned may conflict with some compliance mandates, and Microsoft has their reasonings on that. And then it gets into a lot more of the technical, like turning off old TLS settings, disabling legacy authentication. But rounding up, these 19 items here are a pretty good approach to handling cloud security. Again, it's not a replacement for that holistic security posturing, but these are kind of some major items that can really help, to say the least.
Yeah, so I mean, as you're looking at this, some of this, and I think Adam, you've got this on a slide later. Some of these are really simple to go after. Others require a little bit more overhaul. So something like you're requiring MFA for administrative roles sounds easy, but when you start looking into the what does the admin role do? Did you use that role as a connector to some kind of third-party application? Well, if you turn on MFA, I promise you, you just broke that. You're going to end up with little challenges like that. This also gets back to the whole bigger holistic view. Well, what is an administrative role? Who has the administrative role? What has the administrative role? Why does a normal user account have full God rights within an Office 365 tenant? Normal users should not have God rights in 365 or any of the Microsoft stack. The better practice is you take the admin rights off of that. You have a separate dedicated admin account for them. For us internally, I used to have God rights in 365. A couple years ago, we made the mandate, all of Simplex wide, to say that, nope, we cannot have that anymore. So now there is a Kevin something 365 admin account. And then the other people who have admin accounts all have their unique account. MFA is enabled on them, MFA is enforced on them. So that way, if something happened to my account, they don't automatically have rights to go do whatever they want within the tenant. The admin account is only used when I need to do administrative functions. A lot of seasoned, I'm not going to use older, I'm going to use seasoned network administrators hate that concept. Because you know what, years ago, I always used to be able to go in there and do whatever I wanted because it was convenient and quick, and people stopped bugging me. Can't do that anymore. The times have changed. You have to lower your attack profile. And again, this is going back to that whole holistic view of security, changing your overall posture so that way it makes it more difficult for some kind of malicious entity to go ahead and attack you.
Yep. So that segues in pretty well to some of the next slides here about these action items, because if you look over the items here in those quick summaries there, in some instances it can be a little bit vague and leave a lot of guesswork about, well, how do I actually do this? And even further, if I do this, what's going to happen to my end users that I have to worry about? Because the last thing you want to do, again, is create a change for the sake of security that also brings business to a halt. Yes, you might be secure, but you also have the your boss in your office saying, "Why did you do this to me?" So when you go into one of the action items, it actually breaks down a lot of good information here. For instance, why something is a risk, the anticipated end user impact, any prerequisites that you might need to do, next steps, and the implementation status. The Microsoft APIs and how they build everything is really intelligent at being able to look at itself and say whether something's implemented or not, which is actually pretty nifty, because as you address these items and go through and do stuff, Microsoft can kind of query that information and say, oh, you fixed this, thumbs up, which looked really weird in my Teams background blurring and whatnot. But it's nice from that perspective. But you do have the option to accept the risk, do a third-party resolution, and even implement alternate mitigations. In that last slide, you noticed one of the items was set with a alternative mitigation put in place. And that was regarding your global admins, because there is an administrative account in that particular tenant that exists as a connector for other stuff, and paring that down would actually break the integration. It's unfortunate, it's not great, but we've done the best possible in that instance to mitigate appropriately and updated that secure score value. It also allows you, like I said, you can even accept risk in some instances, which those do address the score points and points value, which you do get more points based on the impact of it. And to get the most points possible is a complete resolution. In that instance, we didn't get the full points awarded because we weren't able to completely implement the way Microsoft wanted it implemented. But we understood why, we noted that down, and we're able to move forward. So this is kind of what that screenshot looks like. Hopefully it's decent size so you can kind of see that. But in this instance, it was dealing with password hash sync for hybrid environments. And up at the top there, you do have that explanation as to why the points achieved, whether it's been done or not. There is a history section there, so it can kind of track if things have fluctuated over time in the organization. Really good for things like user MFA enrollment, where if you have people getting disabled for, say, troubleshooting purposes, or a new user gets set up and hasn't enrolled yet, you can see that fluctuate over time. Then you've got your action plan down there, where you can put it as a to address, you've got a plan for it, or accepting the risk, or mitigating appropriately. And it is nice to have those notes in there as well, just for documentation's sake. So you do have that at a glance section, which does categorize based on some of the various frameworks out there, whether it's identity or application, stuff like that. The products that use that control specifically, and the products that manage it. And then it gives that little blurb about user impact. Keep in mind that user impact blurb is just the Microsoft anticipated user impact blurb. So your mileage may vary a little bit there depending on your organization, how your organization's configured, the software, people, etc. And of course, Lord knows if Microsoft's analysis and suspected impact was perfect and on the nose every time, a lot of us would be in different career paths, to be honest. But it is a good kind of starting point to kind of measure and think about what that user impact might look like in the environment. And then it details that implementation strategy, basically where to go, what to do. Even has that nice little link in there to click on the appropriate admin center, and takes you almost right to the setting that you need to do. So it's just a simple matter of going through and checking the boxes, changing the toggles, or updating the policy. Of course, a lot of things easier said than done. So again, your mileage might vary on that implementation, again, based on user impact and whatnot. So, and that's just one example, but that's the good overall structure that they have for each action item. In some instances, multiple products may be impacted by this, and they'll spell that out there and where you can go to take care of it. In some instances, the guidance might be a little less clear. For instance, if you have a policy out there saying enable MFA for all users, you might have partnered with a third-party identity solution provider such as Duo or Okta, or there's a dozen other ones out there. And Microsoft might struggle with being able to measure that, to which you'd have that option of that third-party option to say you've mitigated it that way. So good options, good stuff to get into, and it really does make a difference at the end of the day. So this gets a little bit more into some of the stuff that Kevin mentioned. We can kind of break these down a little bit more. These are the things that we've found going through with our client base, us internally, as the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. And these items make a pretty big difference on your secure score as well. So as Kevin mentioned already, requiring multi-factor authentication for those admin roles. Taking that idea of something you have with something, or something with something you have. So if I'm Mr. Bad Guy Hacker and I'm trying to get into Kevin's account, well, first off, I can't just phish him with a regular email because that account doesn't have admin rights. And I'm going to find that out pretty quick, even if I can log in. But if I somehow get his global admin account, I still have to have that code from his authenticator app or hardware token or whatever he's using for that additional factor. The other one that makes a huge difference is limiting those admin roles. So as Kevin again already said, is you don't want to have your everyday user and everyday user account with administrative rights. It's best practice to have a dedicated admin account for dedicated admin purposes. And fortunately, within the Microsoft ecosystem, you can delegate specific admin rights. So if you've got a executive assistant who's really good at managing calendars and needs to manage a whole bunch of calendars for a whole bunch of people, might be able to give her specific admin rights to do just that. And same thing within Microsoft Teams, or if you've got a dedicated security compliance admin that you need to do that, but doesn't need to make changes to the user accounts. Being able to identify that is fantastic. Limiting that is even better. And that really helps align to the principle of least privilege, which is another good thing for a holistic security approach. Moving on from there, this, you're noticing the trend here of MFA being mentioned several times over. First off, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Administration recently added single-factor authentication to their list of cybersecurity no-nos, their bad practice list. Just because things have changed a lot in the last several years.
And by single factor, Adam means a password. Literally, they just told the entire world a password to block off people from stuff is garbage and stop using it.
Yes. And we're even seeing, more updates coming down in the compliance framework saying you really need to consider multi-factor. We're also seeing insurance providers saying we're not going to provide you in cybersecurity liability coverage unless you implement this across the entire organization. And that's created some unique opportunities there. So ensuring that users can complete an MFA enrollment process and set it up themselves is great. That's less work for the IT person, and making it a little bit easier for them as they onboard into the organization, maybe upgrade and get new phones and whatnot. There may still be some work that still has to be done from the IT side of stuff, but making sure they can at least complete the process is one less step for you to worry about. So the next one on here is interesting. And yes, what Bob just said, Travelers Insurance is the poster child, and that has been the wonderful world that I've been living in for the last 3+ months. Just getting that a task accomplished and doing it holistically across the organization. But this is the way that you can do it within Microsoft 365 land. And an extra detail on that is you can actually set up additional policies and configurations to enforce that every time. That gets into conditional access policies, which is one of those things you need that licensing bump for. So this next one's an interesting one. It's that do not expire passwords. This is where Microsoft kind of is butting heads with some compliance mandates. If you think back several years, there was that whole idea of let's change passwords out every year or every quarter. And some compliance frameworks even said, yep, passwords need to rotate on a regular basis. Microsoft's thought on this matter is, well, if you tell your users to change their password every 3 months, they're just going to pick a bad password. I think the biggest poster child I see for that is passwords like spring 2021, summer 2021, autumn 2021, etc. And you'll typically find when those reports come out saying, here's the most used and bad passwords out there, guess what's at the top of the list? Or, of course, that simple one where they have a password of, we'll just say password, and they just keep enumerating one by one by one. The bad guys know this happens. So they're going to be out there as they're trying to brute force into accounts. They're going to be running through, their list of passwords and their algorithms, and they'll go through and try to brute force that. So Microsoft's logic is don't expire the passwords. Only change the passwords when you suspect something's going on. And that way you can train your users and work with them to say, let's put secure, good passwords in place. I've seen some organizations that go about and say, yep, we're going to have a 12-character minimum. One organization that I'm aware of actually requires about a 20-character one, but they work in very highly specialized industries and send stuff to space.
On a side note of passwords, we have actually trained ourselves to be horrible with passwords. That concept of capital P @ $5 garbage. utter garbage when it comes to password strength. All you've done is made, exactly like Adam said, a password that people refuse to use, and they come up with 1,000 ways around it. A more smart, a more better way to approach a password is to do something that we usually refer to as a passphrase. So pick the first paragraph of a book that you love and grab the first 5 words of it. Stick a character between them, capitalize something. You're going to remember that so much easier. There was a comic done a couple years back, XKCD. You look up XKCD and passphrases. I promise you will find it. Battery horse staple. Correct. It explains exactly why it's wrong. What was I found? I saw something fly by. Something about just make it hard. Yeah, exactly. The characters make it hard to remember. If you do something with the passphrases, they're words you remember. You could go along the route of first names of people that you probably love or care about. And then again, change what you need to comply with whatever policy for the location that you're working with. Like banks, this blows my mind. Banks love limiting passwords to 12 characters. You can only use 3 special characters. Let's limit the strength of what a password could be. I do not understand that in the banking industry, but that's just me. So yeah, just a little rant on passwords. Stop using the ridiculous symbols and stuff like that. Longer passwords as long as you possibly can. Make it easy to remember for yourself. And more importantly, use a password manager for yourself. That is the ultimate way to handle passwords. So you could literally not know them and they're stored for you securely somewhere else.
Yep, and there's a lot of great password managers out there that are free or even cheap. I think even LastPass Premium is like $10 a month or whatever. Not only from the corporate side of stuff, because Lord knows dealing with security incidents on the corporate side takes a lot of time, money, etc. And if $10 a month is what helps eliminate that and reduce that risk, that's money well spent. But even from the personal side too, $10 a month isn't a whole lot. That's usually less than the cost of eating out a meal. And you're increasing your security posture and making yourself more secure. Couple that with,
I say KeepPass on the personal level, I think is $1 a month. I mean, if you can't afford that, what are you doing with your passwords anyway?
Right. And of course, when you think about it too, there's a pretty much a data breach every other day, or it seems like these days. And those are just the ones that get publicized. So working around a framework like that, keeping an eye on that, definitely makes a big difference. And if you can couple that with multi-factor authentication, you've done a lot more than a lot of other people have, especially in the organizational space. And the last one on here, and this is somewhat of an easy win, but it gets into some technical nuance. So again, that your mileage may vary approach is blocking legacy authentication. You see all the posts out there about how things like, SMB v1 is bad, and how, old print drivers are bad because of reasons, or that recent one that happened, I think about a month or 2 ago, with Auto-Discover having some issues. There was authentication mechanisms written years ago with the idea of, let's have some basic ideas of security based on what we're aware of. Well, things have changed, and legacy authentication is not as secure as it used to be. So blocking that, great step, because that makes it harder for replay attacks, brute forcing, etc., as well as sniffing. But there can be some weird issues with that. We've seen issues before where you block that and suddenly the mail client on iOS freaks out and needs to be reset up. Good point about Bitwarden over there too, from Alan over in chat. You just mentioned that Bitwarden business plans are about $3 a month per user. Home users on family accounts for $40 a year, and up to 6 users, just let them use the free account. Yeah, there's plenty of good low cost options out there that really help everyone. You just want to make sure that you're not clicking the click here to download now to scan for your virus pop-up that happens. But that's a whole separate conversation. But no, there's tons of great reputable solutions out there. And those are kind of the simple low-hanging fruits that we tend to see. There are some other options that you can get into. If we go back and you notice there's one of designating a separate admin account out there in the organization, something like a break glass account. That way you run into a situation where you're mitigating that getting hit by a bus factor. For us, if Kevin's the individual and he gets hit by a bus, there's other global admins in 365 that can go through and do what he does and manage the environment. But it's a matter of making sure that the person that has that is appropriate for their position. And again, it's separated from their day to day.
And block legacy authentication, that's kind of what we were warning about earlier, where you have to clearly communicate what you're trying to do to your environment. Because as Adam said, things will break. He mentioned SMB1. A lot of old manufacturing devices love using SMB to transfer information back and forth. And they don't support the new versions that are infinitely more secure. Well, you can't go tell a manufacturing company to go drop $250,000 to replace a $700 computer. They're just not going to do it. There are other.
That's right.
There are other ways of mitigating those kind of issues, VLANs and all sorts of other good things. But that's, again, bring up what you're trying to do, communicate it across your entire like management team or any of the other teams that deal with that equipment. Be like, this is what I'm trying to do. I see this potentially breaking. What can we do together to make this both so you can continue to operate, but we can secure our environment?
Yep, and regarding legacy authentication, typically, like I said, I threw out the iOS example that we've noticed, but if you do have other applications that might be integrated into a cloud environment somehow, the older they are, you tend to notice some issues here and there. So that's knowing the environment, understanding what's going on there, really helps try to mitigate some of these issues. But again, your mileage may vary when it comes to the implementation of some of these, depending on those organizational unique items. And that just gets into the whole concept of technical debt, and don't get Kevin and I started on that, or you will be here until next month.
Click next, click next.
Yeah. Deal. So some next steps and some good takeaways here. I know we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but that's just a little bit more time for Q&A later. But some good next steps that you can start doing now. Log into the 365 portal and review your secure score. That'll kind of tell you where you sit, where you stand against other people, and what your action items are. You can then identify and plan to implement those high impact items. It could be something as simple as, oh, you've got 2 365 admins and they just don't have MFA enabled. Well, that's easy enough. You can get that done in 5 minutes. So you get some options there. But as I said, you do want to double check that end user impact. Because again, we all know what it's like when a change doesn't go as planned and the staff gets cranky. So understanding that helps mitigate that, and also just keep everyone aware. So when something does go a little bit wrong that's not expected, and you come by, a week later and say, hey, what's going on? I heard you were having an issue. They don't come back with oh, well, this has been broken for the last month. I don't know. But while you're here, can you look at it? Yeah, it just helps keep everyone in the know. And then implement. Again, your mileage may vary depending on your organizational uniqueness, but these items that was listed out, there's nothing too crazy in there that's really disruptive to the world. It's just a matter of good, straightforward security best practices to keep that environment a little bit safer. So, anything else you want to add in for any potential next steps, Kevin?
Not really. I mean, it's one where if you go and look at your Office 365 tenant, you see your score and you're wondering what the heck is this, feel free to send it to us. That's one where we can do our best to try and explain what the actual number there means, how you got to where you are, and then go over the potential plans to make things better. That's what we're here for, customer or otherwise. Just feel free to reach out.
Yep, and that's a good segue into the kind of call to action next slides. We will do some free security reviews, including some secure score items, and kind of an option to go through and figure out what matters to you from the security perspective, and kind of build a little bit of a priorities list. And that's usually just a quick discussion about what the plan is and what could potentially be useful. And then we can even go even further for carry that forward and get a little bit more in depth. Usually that's Bob's handling those conversations, but we'll do a dark web report on the organization. You'll get a copy of one of those books that we mentioned earlier, and a quick summary of where things stand overall, with some next steps mentioned there. And those next steps usually aren't a, hey, go here and buy something off us. It's usually just a, hey, we noticed this technical issue here. You need to address this. You've got a million ways you can address it, but you need to have it on the radar. So if you're interested in that, reach out. There's Bob's email address, and he's happy to work with you on that.
I will tell people I am the worst salesperson on the planet. I am too honest. If you hand me a secure score that's 17%, I will laugh at you, but then I will then sit down and go over that kind of stuff with you. We can go through the security review. We can figure out why you got to that score, and then you're done. Laugh over a beer. We made some progress, made things better. That's what it's about. We've got to have the improvement.
Yep. Yeah, and to piggyback off Kevin, I'm also a terrible salesperson, because I just see the problems and go, I need to fix these. I want the world to be a little bit more safer, a little bit more secure. The last thing I want to do is sit here all day and just go, oh yeah, you need to buy my solution because that's what I say. No, just a million ways to do stuff. There's 12.5 products out there. Alan mentioned Bitwarden. It's not what I prefer to use myself. I've got no complaints with it. It does the job. Same thing with spam filtration solutions and whatnot. There's a million ways to handle this, and yeah, at the end of the day, we just want to get you taken care of. So if there are those low-hanging fruit items out there that really scream, fix me, we'll let you know. And even give you some possible pointers on what can be done to fix them. If you want to engage us and get our help in those, let us know. We're happy to help. I think we had a situation not too long ago. A prospect mentioned some potential malware concerns. We gave him advice on incident response and how to clean it up. So yeah, if you've got the questions, concerns, reach out. We're happy to have that chat. So we do have some new webinars in the works. The next one coming up is IT Budgeting 101. That is coming soon. I believe there'll be an email going out after this with a link to register and get set up in that. So keep an eye out for that if that's something you're of interest, or yeah, word salad today. If that is something of interest to you, feel free to register and attend. I don't think Kevin and I will be doing that one. We'll probably be Bob and maybe Patty, but we'll see. So, and at the end of the day, feedback. Please give us some feedback. You can email Bob, let us know. Let him know that Adam and Kevin were a little bit weird and wonky, and hey, if you like that stuff, great. But no, seriously though, if you did find this useful, valuable, good information to go over, let us know. If there's other stuff that you want to know going forward, let us know. If you've read one of Bob's books, let him know on Amazon. Either way, the only way we can improve, be better, is by listening. And if we don't have people telling us what we need to do, in some cases, it makes it really hard to do that, because at the end of the day, ignorance is bliss. So just let us know at the end of the day. So that is, that's the slide deck. So I think we can open things up for a little bit of discussion here.